Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back at you again with some more lore. And today's video, boys and gals, we're starting a brand new series where we're going to be finding out, does your faction suck? Or is your faction good? Depending if you want to be optimistic or pessimistic that day. And we're talking about Warhammer 40k and all its goodness. Where else could we even begin to start without the poster boys of the setting? With the Space Marines. So in this video, we're going to be covering three things. 1. What are Space Marines supposed to be? Number 2, how closely do Space Marines match up to what they're supposed to be? And finally, number 3, is what they're supposed to be actually good in the setting? And then from there, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be able to know with 100% certainty, maybe kinda, not really, if Space Marines are indeed a good faction, or do they just suck? But before I can get started with today's video, I gotta say a massive thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. Manta Sleep is a company that produces the highest quality sleep masks that you can ever need. Ranging from anything from the stock standard sleep mask, which is of utmost quality, all the way up to some amazing high-end luxury goods. Now, if any of you have any trouble sleeping, I am someone who has had some trouble sleeping a lot in my life. This thing actually helps quite a bit. Putting this on and just using it, just knowing that it's there, maybe it's placebo, I don't know, but like, it really helps me sleep better. First up, we have that Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. From November 29th to December 3rd, you spend anywhere from $99 to $200 and you can get anywhere from 20% all the way up to 30% off. It is their biggest sale they've ever had this year to close off 2024, so if you wanted to get some, go ahead and grab it. But for some reason, if you're not able to buy it or just missed out, they have another last minute holiday deal from the 9th to the 12th and the 16th to the 19th with 15% off everything that you could ever imagine. It is absolutely fantastic, and if you get the correct things in the certain orders, you may even get a mystery bonus sleep kit. Yes! What's in it? Mystery. But it's all good, I can assure you that. And then finally, for the latest of the late boys, December 23rd to December 31st, the final offer. Spend anywhere from $99 to $199 and you get anywhere from 15 to 25% off. And if you go for the $199 offer, not only do you get a crisp 25% off, you also get a free sleep journal. So it helps with sleep, helps with writing down. Pretty nice, pretty neat. But I gotta stress, big thank you to Manta Sleep for signing up right over here. They're awesome, they're amazing, and it's a great quality product. And make sure to use the code GB101. If you're getting something else, you get a 10% discount if you happen to miss up on those cool crypt savings. But go and get it, it's high quality, it helps you sleep, and make sure you use the affiliate link down in the description for your boy so I get that sweet dollar dues. Once again, a very big, huge, massive thank you to Manta Sleep. This is great. I love it. But without any further ado, let's get cracking on with today's video. So, what is a Space Marine? A Space Marine is a genetically augmented super soldier created by the Emperor of Man during the days of the Great Crusade. They are the successors of the Thunder Warriors and the precursors to the Primaris Marines. They were originally created from the original 20 legions. From the original 18 legions, with each legion being the head of a Primarch, their genetic gene father, i.e., every single bit of genetic information, traits, quirks, personalities, etc., they got from that particular individual. After the heresy, the legions were then broken up into 1,000-man chapters by the order of Rabute Guilliman via his penning of the Codex Astartes. This was, however, only supposed to be a temporary matter, but Bobby G kinda got shanked by the sexy snake, and he was in a coma for about 10,000 years until he got resurrected by good, thick-thighed Eldar titties. God bless. Essentially, in the modern Warhammer 40k, Space Marines are still segregated into their 1,000-man strong chapters, but Guilliman is flirting with the idea of the Legion, and I know the Lion sure as hell doesn't care for anything regarding chapters, so we don't know, we could be seeing a return, but for most chapters they're still 1,000-man strong units. Space Marines are meant to serve as the apex of humanity's champions and heroes, surpassed only by the Adeptus Astartes. They are the greatest warriors that humanity possesses. They are the true superhumans of 40k, and what everyone wishes and ascribes they could be. But not only are they supposed to be superhuman, they're also supposed to be very monastic knightly. You see, what a lot of people don't understand is that when we say Space Marines are supposed to be knights, we mean that in a very literal sense, at least in like a feudalistic type of way. What people don't understand is that the Imperium is very neo-feudalistic, like hilariously neo-feudalistic. The Imperium has a nobility structure, and in some cases an aristocracy structure depending on the world in question. There are imperial titles that are recognized in the wider Imperium, with the Emperor being at the very top of that. However, ever since he was interned to the Golden Throne, the High Lords of Terror have taken over as his regency. They are essentially a ruling oligarchy. They are the highest of the high, and then from there, each different worlds encounters various different titles. For example, you could be a duke of a world, or you would be a duke of a system. It's hilariously inconsistent. But one prime example that we have are the Crimson Fists, one of the most famous examples of Space Marines throughout all of 40k. And their chapter master, Petro Cantor, has the official noble title of the Lord Hellblade, for he is the current ruler of the Lordship of the Hellblade, which refers to Hellblade Castle, which is on Rimsworld itself. He is a Space Marine, but he's also a part of the Imperial nobility. And this is not exclusive to the Crimson Fists. Literally, Space Marines are given 5 worlds. You see, as the Imperium has been degrading more and more and more, and while Bobby G has done his best to put a stop to that, he's only been around for about 1,000 or so years, maybe a few hundred. Timeline in 40k is still a little weird, so take that with a grain of salt. The Imperium is still very feudalistic in that sense. The Imperium is unable to govern the worlds that it has. In fact, slowly but surely it's losing more and more of its grip on its worlds. What we do know is that they are slowly taking pieces of worlds, systems, however it may be, and they are giving them to Space Marines more often than not. Indeed, normally a Space Marine would be giving a single world as a 5, but now it's more of the case of they have been given entire systems or multiple planets. And in fact, Space Marines are becoming hilariously self-sufficient and autonomous. Now granted, they always were supposed to be self-sufficient and autonomous, but now it's getting to the point where it's like way over what it's supposed to be. And in doing so, there are at least 1,000 Space Marine chapters said to be about 1,000,000 Space Marines. So in essentiality, each Space Marine chapter is its own noble family house, if we're going to equate it to feudalist terms. They rule and they govern and they are knights. And the guard are, well, levies. And you think about it, it kind of makes sense from a feudalistic standpoint. The guard are supposed to be the feudal levies that are thrown at the foe to hold them, to stop them, to just wait them up, until you get the knights in shining armor riding atop their mounted steeds, aka drop pods and thunderhawks, or literal bikes in the case of the White Scars. And they come on in, they slam through the enemy, they're the ones who do the hard barge, they're the ones who get all they've done, they're the ones who get all the credit despite the guard having sold thousands of their lives. So in terms of a practical sense, yeah, they most definitely are monastic feudal knights. And you take a look at them from a aesthetic sense, oh yeah, big time. Space Marines are clad in power armor. Power armor is 40k's plate mail if we compare it to our modern world. Pure and simple. It is way above anything that anyone can expect and is just very, very, very nice. Look, you may hate the Marines for all you want, but you gotta admit, a goddamn Marine has some good goddamn drip. Look at that. And there are knights of every kind with various different aesthetics representing all different types of cultures. Hell, we even have the Black Templars who are literal crusaders. In short, Space Marines are supposed to represent the apex of humanity. The best of the best of the best. But that's what they were supposed to be. In the grimdark twist that is 40k, they've been corrupted and changed into a basically ruling nobility. They are way and above humanity, but whereas before they were supposed to be defenders, protectors, wards, scions of the next generation, but now they've just become nobles, who more often than not see their subjects as lesser or beneath them. In very many cases, they are the worst aspect of nobility made manifest. Powerful beyond all rational belief, able to destroy easily 10 to 1 of their peers, but at the same time, they don't really care about them that much. And it's a coin toss. Whereas always supposed to be unified legions marching towards glory for honor and fame, now you get minor noble houses that bicker and squabble amongst each other as much as they do the own enemy. And that is what Space Marines basically are. But now, we'll go into the second part, which is, how well do Space Marines match up? The answer? Yes. Yes, they do. Space Marines are exactly what they're supposed to be. They are big, loud, superhuman nobles who think that you are shit and who do whatever they want and damn anyone else. They are perfect in every single aspect. The Space Marines are one of the few times where they match up perfectly to what they're supposed to be. Space Marines are big, angry superhumans who do whatever they want, and they are about as diverse as the human species in and of themselves. And while yes, some people may complain there are some inconsistencies with Space Marines here and there, I don't really put that into much of account, because if you're talking about inconsistencies, name me one faction in Warhammer 40k that has ever been consistent. So if I take that into account for the Space Marines, I have to take that into account into everything. So for the sake of my sanity and for your enjoyment, let's just say that we acknowledge that but choose to ignore it. As I was saying, Space Marines are literal nobility. In some cases, you can have the Iron Hands who act like very French nobility and who really don't give a damn, but then you have the Salamanders who act much more like the romanticized nobility. They love and they care their components and their family, and they treat them as they were their own kin, willing to die for them as much as they would their own battle brother. 40k has a lot of allegory to it, a lot of examples, a lot of metaphors. A prime example of this being Western society as a whole. The Emperor and his legions represent Rome, generally speaking, surprising absolutely no one, and eventually the legions were broken and they were divided up into different chapters. Still the same, but much more elite and much more on a grander scale. And same thing, feudal knights were often the professional soldier of the day and considered to that of the legionaries of Rome, and they were often armed and armored in a similar manner, at least when you talk about the Dark Ages. I mean, when you think about Warhammer 40k, you think about Space Marines, the giant superhuman super soldier knight. In terms of how good of a super soldier they are arguably the best super soldier of fiction. A Space Marine is made so by the implantation of several specialized organs known as gene seed organs. These are additional organs that change the way the Space Marine functions. Essentially, they make him non-human. We're talking about an extra heart, an extra lung, an organ that allows them to spit acid, an organ that allows them to consume the memories of the dead by eating them, an organ which basically gives them a combat stim that's built into their blood, and the black carapace, the most famous, which is a type of implant that allows them to directly interface to their armor, so that allows them to move as if they had no armor at all. Space Marines are able to jump massive distances, lift heavy things, they're able to scream God Almighty knows how loud, they are armed with the best gear, the best weapons. They are the quintessential Space Marine, the super soldier. So, if Warhammer 40k set out to make a super soldier Space Knight, that is exactly what they got. Not really much to say here, because a Space Marine is a Space Marine. You can complain about Space Marines in many different ways, but one thing that you can complain is that they nailed their aesthetic damn well. And that is the one thing that is consistent across basically every incarnation. From Primaris to Firstborn to Old Legionnaire, they look like a giant super soldier Space Marine. And if you drip them out in the right way, they definitely look like a badass ancient knight. So, we've talked about what is a Space Marine. Super Soldier Space Knight. We talked about, does a Space Marine match up to being a Super Soldier Space Knight? Yes they do. In fact, I would go so far as to say, in terms of 40k factions, no one matches their aesthetic better than a Space Marine. But now we get to the fun part. Do Space Marines as a faction make sense in 40k? And are they actually good? Space Marines are the poster boys of Warhammer 40k. When you think of Warhammer, you think of Space Marines. You think of Dreadnoughts. You think of Drop Pods. The old Dawn of War trailers are God for a reason. They are really good. But this begs the question, are Space Marines good for the setting? Do they make sense in the setting? Or are they just a hindrance? Now, ultimately, the idea of a Space Marine is something that is 40k, and it is pretty good for the setting. It is built around the setting, and it's one of the things that makes 40k so unique. The sheer strength, the power, the brutality of it. I don't think anyone would ever argue here. 40k is Space Marine. It is so intrinsically tied to it. So I'm not going to really argue if Space Marines are good or bad for the setting, because, well, they are good, they are the setting. They're such a core element and aspect, to remove them in any fashion would completely change Warhammer as a whole. Now, whether or not you think that would be a good thing, that's a topic for a different video. But what I want to answer here is, are Space Marines as they're represented good for 40k? Would Space Marines be better if they changed in 40k? You see, a Space Marine is a genetic super soldier, but not really a super soldier as we would in other settings. Unlike things like Halo or Battletech, where they are, yes, very much different, but they're a bit more grounded in science, and theoretically, anyone could potentially become one of them. Space Marines have such a aura of mystique about them. Warhammer 40k is often considered to be an amalgamation of science fiction, fantasy, and post-apocalyptic sci-fi, which is pretty fair, but what people don't understand is that when they think about fantasy, they often immediately jump to psychers, to magic, to demons. Oh, that's what the fantasy is. You see, but what people miss is that they often underestimate the fantasy aspect that can weave itself into quote-unquote grounded material. The Imperium is losing its technology. It's only with the return of Gilman that that's starting to change. But for the wider Imperium that is not directly under Bobby G and Ultramar, technology is something that needs to be preserved, not improved. There is no progress. There is no forward momentum. There is only keeping what we have and praying to God that it doesn't lose what it needs to. Keep on going. To the modern Imperium, a Space Marine is not a super soldier. A Space Marine is an angel of death, but an angel nonetheless. When your average Imperial citizen looks at a Space Marine, they don't see the apex of human genealogy and technology, something that they could become. When a normal average Imperial citizen looks at a Space Marine, they quite literally see a magic paladin clad in runic armor, just the best of the best, utterly unobtainable. And that's very important when talking about what makes 40k so special. Space Marines do crazy, wild, wacky things. They are so completely removed from humanity, but the thing is though, people don't see them as human. And we know, oh, they don't see them as human, but no, it's not the case as they see them as superhuman. They see them as something mythical, magical. You see, when people talk about 40k, we often look at it from our own perspective as if we were in 40k. But what we need to understand is that Warhammer is so far removed from our modern rationality that it is completely different. So, you may think of a Space Marine, but what you think of a Space Marine is not going to be what a 40k citizen thinks of it, because you and that 40k citizen have about 40,000 years worth of difference in between you. Combine that with the fact that the average person doesn't even meet a Space Marine, or let alone see a Space Marine, and you hear these tales of all this going on in the world, to see a literal 8-foot-tall monster wielding a gun that can rip apart tanks and a giant sword that can cut through basically anything you've ever seen, and to see them come, descend, kill what was ever molesting you for God Almighty knows how many months or years, and then just leave without a word, that is not a case of science fiction. That is a case of fantasy. That is a case of you having a spiritual moment in seeing something that shouldn't exist. And that's something that we don't give Space Marines enough credit for. We only think of Space Marines as a fantastical element when we think about the Chaos Space Marines in particular. Thousand Sun Sorcerers summoning demons. We think about the blue fire from which they spit, ooh, magic. Nurgle Death Guard. Literal walking tanks, zombies of putrid corpses. Truly fantasy. We think about the Emperor's Children, twisted and maligned demonic entities from the depths of our darkest nightmares. They are fantasy. Raging Khorne Berserkers, with living blood flowing from their weapons, begging, needing more, for their nails bite and they must be satiated. We aspire fantasy to those elements of 40k that are traditionally fantasy. But we don't really understand that for the average Imperial citizen, the normal Space Marine is a fantastical element. He is so far beyond removed. He is a magical knight. And that's because we don't really understand that the same was kind of true in our own history. You see, to the average normal peasant in the medieval age, while they may meet their lord, while they may talk to them, more than a normal Space Marine, nobles were still a unobtainable class. In the psyche of the peasantry, a noble was an ordained right given unto God. It was something completely different and wholly and utterly removed. They truly believed that they were lesser than nobles, and nobles truly believed that they were greater than peasants. Now, how some nobles believed that and how they showed that and interpreted that changed. You could get those who are benevolent, or you could get those who are malevolent. Either one worked and either one came, and a lot of people both suffered and prospered at the hands of a noble. Yet the same is true for Space Marines. They're so unabashedly different from the normal Imperium. They are changed and they are just incredibly powerful. And that's why, honestly, I have to say Space Marines are perfect the way they are in 40k. Because if we take what they were supposed to be, if we take what the Emperor meant for them, right? They were supposed to be the next evolution of humanity. They were supposed to be baseline soldiery, right? As they were during the heresy. It would have the same impact as other super soldiers of science fiction settings. They would be an elite cadre, yeah, but it'd be like something like Spec Ops. Anyone could join, anyone could obtain it, anyone could be it. It would lose its fantasy. But the whole point of 40k is to show that in the grim darkness of the far future, we are more backward than we've ever been. It's to show that in 40k, the modern 40k, the dude who's there, who's living, his life is so much more worse than yours, that what should be the apex of science is interpreted as the apex fantasy. Space Marines are supposed to be a reminder of how backward we are. They are the Emperor's angels of death. They are his holy warriors sanctified by the Emperor. They are fantasy knights, clad in magical armor, wielding terrible ancient weapons, so far removed from the rest of us. And they remind us that that is not what they're supposed to be, though. The Emperor wanted them to be soldiers, but with his fall and the deterioration of the Emperor and humanity, they've become magical knights, fantastical elements that are so far above everything that we've ever known. Not because they were meant to be that way, but simply because we as humanity have failed to hold on to the knowledge and power in which we possess. We failed to do anything to hold on to what we had because of our own hubris. Those who were supposed to be better than us, those who were supposed to be greater, fell to the same travesties of humanity. And as their fathers, the Primarchs, fell, so too did their sons. And since our warders fell, we too, as humanity, fell with them. When you look at a Space Marine, you see a giant power armored dude wielding a magic sword, clad in great armor, with the laurels of victory upon his brow. we stare and gawk in awe because it looks bloody amazing. But that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to look at that and we're supposed to be ashamed. We're supposed to be saddened. Because a Space Marine in 40k is not what a Space Marine is in 30k. Not only are they a downgrade and a degradation of Space Marines in the physical sense, but also in the spiritual sense, what they represent. When we look at a Space Marine in 40k, we're not supposed to be happy, we're supposed to be appalled. Because what we're seeing is a feudal knight governing over a scared population of ignorant idiots. Whereas before, they were supposed to be the standing army which everyone could achieve that could bring in humanity to where it was supposed to be. They were supposed to be the first, the best of the best. Now they are the lost remnant of what the Emperor had in mind. And even then, they are a far cry of what they were supposed to be. And that's ultimately what Space Marines are supposed to be in Warhammer 40k. They are supposed to be knights, a reminder of what we lost, a reminder that we no longer can get to that point, a reminder that despite all the Emperor's best wishes, despite everything that he tried to do, there now exists a noble class of humans who believe themselves so far better above normal humanity and have abandoned any and all wishes, acts, nor deeds that the Emperor had tried to. The Imperium had fallen, and what had risen in its place were feudal aristocracies. The Space Marines are the epitome of Warhammer 40k in every aspect. They are the epitome of its brutality, of its carnage, of its degradation, and most importantly, of its fantasy. But it's not the light-hearted fantasy in which we often think of. It's not the hope of Tolkien, nor is it the whimsy of Dungeons and Dragons. No, ladies and gentlemen, right here, right now, this fantasy is the dark dystopia, in which everything good has been changed, in which all has been lost, so much so that something which should be science, which should be available to every single one of us, has been taken, twisted, molded, and manipulated into an angelic knight, a feudal lord, protecting us from whatever darkness is left. And how he treats you is up purely to the whimsies of his chapter, and you have nothing to say, you have nothing to gain, and you have nothing to do. You are merely a peasant at behest of a mighty lord, and pray that he does not take fancy in suffering. So all of that put together, I gotta say that Space Marines, as a faction in Warhammer 40k, for what they're supposed to represent, they are a very, very good faction. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys also very much for watching. I do love and appreciate you. Make sure to comment down below, what do you guys think? Did you guys notice that Space Marines were always feudal lords? Did you put two and two together? Is this new information to you? And what do you think? Do you guys think that Space Marines as feudal lords, as this reminder of what humanity has lost, as essentially a reminder to the failure which we suffered and how far we've fallen, do you think that's a good idea? Would you change it? Would you make something different? But yeah, let me know. Again, I want to say a massive thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. Make sure to click the link down below and make sure to buy some stuff now. We have that massive, beautiful Black Friday sale and there's going to be some great deals throughout all of December. So go on, grab them. It's great. Thank you once again for sponsoring. Make sure you use the code GB101 to get a nice, cool, crisp 10% off if you're not getting one of those good deals already. But make sure you use the link down below so your boy gets a little bit of extra dollar. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. But I want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching and a very special massive thank you to my members. Shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Majora of the Void. And I want to say a massive big thank you to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damek and Mr. Andy McGee. And then a very big, massive shout out to my two Privateer members, Mr. Thomas Moslons and Mr. Ivan_SVW. Thank all of you for your continued support. It means the world to me and it gives me a little safety net so that, I don't gotta worry about it if YouTube decides to be YouTube, And if you guys would like to join up with the memberships, you can access these videos a full day early, all the awesome benefits. You get to talk to your boy and myself in the Discord, special Discord access, all that nonsense, and a whole big bunch of good, awesome, lovely stuff. So click the link, join up, but remember, you don't got you. This will always be free and I will love you no matter what. Mwah. But ladies and gentlemen, I have been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching this. Make sure to stay strong out there, boys and girls, and I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. episode 1, pretty simple. It is Space Marines, but ooh boy, wait till I get to some Xenostones. Oh god.